Okay, now we're recording. I'm sorry, Olan. I'm just
Hey, no worries at all. So can you guys see this? It's just a brown bag, Tanzania. And so how this started, I work every year in that they give me for mental health, and even in my other classes, we do a lot of like trying to help others. And just little background. So I grew up with not a lot. There was times that we didn't have basic needs, any of that kind of stuff. So I remember not doing very well in school at all. Barely graduated. Took a couple years off of a high school and went up in commercial fish in Alaska. And before getting into college, and even then, I was on academic probation. And then, but once I had the basic needs met and felt safe and all that, I ended up graduating, I think, magna cum laude, and then almost a 4.0 for my master's. And just kind of realizing and studying a lot about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so like for me, as a Joseph teacher here, I fight fires. I pick up as much time as I can working, just so that I can kind of afford to provide shoes, clothing, food, literally anything that I can see any students in this school. And it doesn't matter, K-12. I don't ask any questions if I know if they need something. Even if they don't ask, because I definitely would never have asked as a student. Because I mean, I remember being the smelly kid in class, didn't understand that I was wearing the same clothes every day, wearing the same shoes for everything till they're just tattered and torn. And it was tough, but my mind wasn't on education at all, because it was I'll skip ahead to, and I'll go back, but I have this right here of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And that's kind of what I kind of focused on, what everything changed in Africa as well. But this psychological need, if there's not food, a safe place to go, clothing, all that kind of stuff, that this student's ability to learn is at the very tippy top. And so without all this other stuff being met, and that's something that I'm hoping that schools and other people understand, then we're not going to be able to spoon feed knowledge, or we can't just have a student who's needing so much, and we're like, oh, they do your homework and do all this kind of stuff. Because I was a perfect example. Like I remember teachers thought I was dumb in a lot of ways, because I wouldn't turn in any homework. I just had no longing or any need for school at all. The only reason I went was for sports. And so that's why another reason why I'm coaching as well. But that kind of spurned this whole thing to go to Africa. Is I've been trying to instill my main goal at this school is to make sure that all the kids here are taken care of and they feel safe, and that they don't have any needs. And so I'll spend whatever is needed. I'll spend the time. It doesn't matter. And then after that, so as long as my kids here are met, then I started working on projects with my students to help others in our local community. So we'd fill out the food box. We would do random acts of kindness of raking people's lawns, shoveling snow, anything we could do to kind of either brighten up somebody's day or just to help them. And I think it helps our students mentally as well. Helping others is one of the biggest things you can do if you're struggling with mental health issues, that and exercise. And so it branched out. We were doing stuff to feed homeless. We were doing stuff to clothe the homeless people on those fires that were affected last year. And then it got to where, well, what else can we do? And we started kind of talking about the need in other countries. And one of the biggest needs is in Africa, obviously. And so what I did, and it actually worked out, because I broke my foot at the end of fire season last season. And I probably should have had surgery. I didn't have it because I wanted to continue fighting fires, and I'm terrified of any of that kind of stuff. And so what ended up happening is I had probably another month that I thought that I needed to recover. And so luckily my wife was all in, and she's actually in on this talk. And she helped me get set up with the group called IVHQ to volunteer in Africa. And they had this huge need because of COVID. They had a massive drop in, and obviously for obvious reasons, in volunteers. And a lot of these schools, they really depend on the volunteers. And so I went over there hoping to teach like history, but I knew I was going to be teaching mostly English. And then, but I wanted to branch out, teaching chess and basketball as well, two of my passions. And I was hoping to be able to offer more than just the normal English, and maybe find if there's kids that are just incredibly gifted at either of those, that can offer another out, or just another interest as well, and another way to get kids to stay in school. And so I was able to bring over 16 chessboards and then a ton of basketballs. And that was a lot of fun. And so I started out as actually teaching. And so I was teaching in, they call it Chetty school, but it's actually 8 different schools. And so wherever the biggest need was, if they were missing a teacher, or if they had more students in a different spot, or if they needed some sort of specialty, I bounced around to all those different 8 schools. And then when they were on holiday, I went and taught at a special needs school called the Destiny's Foundation School. And at all of those, like no electricity, no running water. They cooked their food on a fire. At the special needs school that I taught at, that behind me was where they want to build a kitchen. And so one of my goals, and I'm going to make it happen. Like it's not just a far off goal. It's in 2023. I want to bring a group of our community. It started out as just Joseph students. But now the goal is I want to bring whoever wants to help and give back. And so I want to bring some people that know how to build, construction background. And I want to do a fundraiser and build them a kitchen at the special needs school. But other than that, I mean, there's just need everywhere. And so I have right now a lot of students, some teachers, some parents that want to be in on this. And so there's a bunch of different projects that we can work on. There's working with animals, working with children, working with everything. But what ended up happening is I was teaching, as you can see here, and one week, so I taught for a week, and I had a big group of students, and it was a ton of fun, and really quickly fell in love with my students. What I ended up noticing though, the following week is I started missing students, the same students that you get that connection with. So there were students that I was teaching chess, and they were not there. There were students that I was teaching basketball, not there. Students that I was working one-on-one with at the special needs school, not there. One of the students wasn't there. And then at the elementary, I'm missing students as well. So I started getting concerned. Like I don't like ever missing a student. Not at my school, and the kids know here that if you're gone, I'm going to get a hold of you or get a hold of your parents. Like I think for me, school is my safe place. That was like where I felt the most comfortable. And so I really try to instill that in my students here as well. And make sure that if they're not at school, to figure out why and what I can do. Because for me, education was the only way out for my family, for everything. The poverty we were at, the poverty I thought that we had an incredibly hard childhood. There was times that we lived in motels, in a van, needing food, like all that kind of stuff. And I remember thinking like, this is really, really difficult until going to Africa. And then I realized that my childhood was nothing compared to what these kids are going through. And they're some of the most amazing, incredible, happy children as well. But so what I did was I met with the director, which is what they call like their principal, superintendent, all in one. And then I found out that like I did some home visits and found out that these kids were literally starving. Some of the kids passing away from starvation. At the orphanage I taught at, I found out that a ton of the kids had HIV. They didn't have shoes. They were going to school with no shoes. And there was just stuff that I didn't quickly notice. And so what I started to do from there on was figure out ways that I can get kids to school. And so let me see this one. This is a video. It's kind of loud. This is me teaching. It's actually kind of funny towards the end. I'll just fast forward it. I get to A. If you could hear this. They got really confused on this part because they they say like they don't say they say they don't say a, they say ah. And so saying it different ways. So there was a lot of ways that I was getting taught while there, but and so I think I got a little off track, but these are just my notes. So this is teaching chess. This is one of the funnest things I did, and I actually did this the whole time. So after I would be done teaching at one of the elementary schools, I'd go to the high school in the afternoon, and I would spend a lot of time with students, and I would teach each class chess, and several of them got very, 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 very good really quickly. So one of the students actually that I taught chess, I gave him a little chess board that was magnetized that he took home, and he actually practiced on his own. And I told him, I'll play you on Monday when we come back, and see how much better you got. And also he had a little book that he was reading about it as well. He ended up coming back and blowing me away. Played me one of the toughest games that I've had. And he just learned, like, so that shows like his intellect was top notch. And so what I ended up doing on that one, and I talked to him quite a bit, found out that he wanted to be a doctor, but I also found out that he is an orphan. Both of his parents passed away from HIV. Found out that other than his school uniform, he didn't really have any clothes, didn't have shoes, didn't have a way to take the government test to get into medical school. And so I ended up paying for that. And then he got into medical school while I was there. And the deal that I have with him right now is I paid for his first 2 years, and he's going to medical school in Dar es Salaam now. Paid for his food, his educate, like all that kind of stuff. It is a government school, so the cost for that, especially to be a doctor, isn't actually that great. The biggest cost is food and clothing and room and board and all that. And so his first 2 years are covered, and we're in contact quite a bit. He's doing really well. But that was another goal, is to try to find people. And what I was trying to explain to the other volunteers is that, yes, volunteers will come, we'll try to do as much as we can. But the problem is that we leave and we don't know when we're going to come back, especially. So when COVID hit, volunteers left and they weren't there for a year. And so there's a lot of need there. And so what I'm hoping to do, and especially when I go back and what I'm doing right now, is I'm trying to pinpoint people that can stay and do the most good. And so he wants to come back to his community, be a doctor, and to do everything he can to help his people here, which is like one of the biggest goals I have as well, is to find people that are going to stay, not just volunteers. We'll be there for maybe 3 weeks. We're going to do as much good as we can, but while we're there, I'm hoping that we can instill that longing for others and give people kind of heads up, that big step up that they'll need to help out their own people. Find the next Nelson Mandela there is a huge hope. And you guys can stop me anytime. I just kind of have notes and I'm kind of just talking. So if you have any questions, do not be afraid to just kind of stop me. So basketball. So this one was tough. There are no basketball courts in Tanzania, or at least where I was at. This little hoop wasn't even a basketball hoop, but we used it for that. Tried to teach elementary basketball. Most of the time, actually, when I would teach basketball, it turned into soccer, which is actually pretty fun. I worked with these little kids right here. And can you guys hear this at all? Can you guys hear me?
We hear you.
Oh, not the video. My bad. Okay. Yeah. So in the video that I showed before, it was just me teaching and then trying to get used to how to teach. And they just thought it was hilarious. So they actually filmed me teaching it because I kept messing it up. And so towards the end, I got really good, or used to it at least. But it was it's difficult. So I did more one-on-one teaching instead of the full classes for that English. But teaching basketball,
soccer is the do the kids kick around something if they don't have a soccer ball? Do they play soccer with something?
Yeah,
else?
Absolutely. Yep. So they have no soccer nets. They have old goals that you can tell would probably put in maybe in the 70s, 80s. They don't have any nets. What actually they would be kicking around are balls of trash. You would see that. And so another project we did actually was we raised some money, got some other volunteers to volunteer for it. And what we did was we bought as many soccer balls as we could. And then we would go around to soccer fields that we'd see those kids playing with those balls of trash. And I never once before we were doing that saw kids actually using a real ball. It was always either taped up balls of trash, or like things that weren't even taped up and just using whatever they could to kick around. So actually what my basketballs turned into after I was done with my units is soccer balls. And luckily I brought a lot. And then we bought actually just a ton of actual soccer balls, and we would just toss them out in the field and kind of move on and try to get as many schools as possible that we could. And so that was actually that was pretty fun because the kids were always pretty happy for that. But yeah, soccer is their passion, and they are just incredible at it. So I tried to do the basketball. It was a lot of time for it. But I don't think it actually sunk in too well. So, which was expected, but
at a national level, do they field basketball teams? In some of the,
I know. I actually don't know that. I know that their soccer team is really solid, and they play in the Afro League and do really well.
But there aren't, even at big city schools, there's not basketball.
There's no basketball. Nope. Okay. I was actually, I did a lot to try to find any schools that had any basketball, and there was nothing there for it. So that might be another little project. The whole time I was there, and I went to a lot of places, a lot of visits. I never saw even a single basketball hoop. So this is the closest thing I can find to it right here on the right. But this is a cute little video of teaching them how to dribble.
Pretty good.
So it was a lot of fun. So pretty much everything changed once I found out. And this is what I was kind of talking before about as well, is that they were on vacation or on holiday. So they had Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. And so I was like, all right, perfect timing. I'll go on this. And so if I had more time, I would absolutely, like with the group, I would definitely, and you made a really good point that it does go back. But just the time, like I spent every waking moment, Saturday, like that I could possibly, and it was still just a drop in the bucket, but even a drop in the bucket to Arusha. But what ended up doing though, is pretty much every family that I visited, like they were always like so grateful, and they were like in tears. The mothers that I would talk to, the children, like so it wasn't just food. It was blankets, shoes was a big one, medicine, transportation, paid for a lot of rent. And so always what I try to do is go to these families these students right here weren't in school. None of these kids were going to school. They were hungry. They would be begging for food. They didn't have the necessities of that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They weren't met. And so the education part wasn't there for them. Their main thing was making sure that their mother was fed. And so another thing about Arusha, and I think a lot of the areas in Tanzania as well, is that and this is really sad. There's a really bad rape culture. They talking to a lot of these mothers. What ended up happening to a lot of them is they were actually raped by somebody with HIV. They ended up with HIV with a lot of kids, and then their husbands left them. Then that happened. That was like in one day. I remember there was like 4 or 5 families that I met with. That was almost the exact same story. And they were HIV positive, and so they weren't able to work, and so their children would literally go out and they would beg for food to try to keep the rest of their family fed. And so what we tried to do, and what spent a lot of time. So we would get up, and so it was me, another volunteer, and then it was a lady named Hope Prosser, who she actually runs Hope and Soul Charity, who I work with still. And every single cent that is sent to her or given to her for this, she'll give a breakdown of what every single thing was spent on. And it's actually pretty incredible. The first home visit that I went on, I did it actually by myself before knowing the customs. And so I met with one of my students' families, and found out for $4, $4 US, I was able to feed a family of 6 for an entire week. I bought out this for $4, and this is crazy, but for $4 I bought out this entire booth of fruits and vegetables, and then we were able to get some rice, some ugali, some spaghetti, and some cooking oil. It blew me away, and I was like, oh my gosh. And so I met with that family. Then the next day, the kid that was gone for the first 2 days was actually back, fed, and then I ended up getting shoes for him and all this other stuff. And then I met with the director of Hope and Soul Charity, and then I found out that they kind of frown upon just going out and not saying that what I did was wrong, but just going out and just randomly giving out food to all these people. And so what they want you to do, and what we did, was we would meet with neighborhood leaders, and then they would pinpoint the families of the most need. And so they would let you, so we would go around and we'd spend days. And so maybe we can meet with maybe 15 families, and you get up at 4 a.m., you go to the market and you buy bags of every single thing. Let's see if I can pull up a picture of what we do. So it'd be here. And so bags of flip-flops, bags of shoes, bags of blankets, and then as much food as possible. We do rice and beans and ugali, vegetables, fruit. And so it wouldn't be just a week of food. We were trying to do months of it, to where it'd be sustainable, to where the students could go to school, they can get the education, because, and I'm going to say this again, like, education is powerful, and it is the way that they can make it out. If they can't read and write, if they don't have the knowledge to go further, they're not going to be able to. It's going to be a repeat of the cycle. And so we would spend hours and hours and hours of doing that. And it was hard. And so, and I will tell you, like, when people ask, they're like, oh, like, if they see off of my Instagram, I couldn't take pictures of what I saw. It's disrespectful, but I saw children starving. I saw the ribs. I saw people like laying on the streets. It was really, really, really difficult. And I remember I started out with one volunteer. It was hard. The volunteer did not want to come back, and it was another volunteer. And the director of the Hope and Soul, she did warn me. She said that it is not easy, what we're going to be doing. The stories that we were being told, and just seeing what we saw, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. It was the fighting back tears and fighting, like, choked up the whole time listening, and then just being very passionate about what can I do to help you? What can we do? And it was usually providing money for rent, making sure that everything was paid for. We ended up buying wheelchairs. We bought, right now, the school, actually, that our school, working on a project. We just did a fundraiser. This little girl, Maasai girl, had her leg bitten and actually taken off by a hyena. And there is their culture, if the child is considered bad luck and they're unable to care for it, they will kill her. And so the director that I was working with, that was telling me about the child, he said, and I was asking Tessa, I was like, what can we do? Can we adopt this child? Like, and it wasn't that easy. And so we ended up being able to pay for all the medical bills, everything we could possibly do for that family, to make sure that daughter is well taken care of. We're getting our prosthetic leg, everything we could do to show that she's not unlucky. They call it unlucky. And so we're going to make her the luckiest girl possible, to try to live as normal as life as possible. But I'm going to be keeping track in 2 years when I go back. I'm going to be finding her and just making sure that she is still loved. But it was sad to see. I should have put that picture up on here. She's the sweetest little girl. Her name is Grace. But I'm working on fundraisers like crazy. I'm doing an alumni game for basketball. on November 27th, to where there's not a charge to come in for admission. Instead, it's donations are welcome, and every cent is going to go to Hope and Soul Charity to continue doing these home visits. That's what she's been doing. We started it doing it where volunteers do it once a week. I'm trying to do it to where somebody does it daily. And so we just meet with family after family after family, hear their story.
What was the language situation?
So actually they speak Swahili, but most of them can speak English, especially elementary, junior high, high school age are English speakers.
The teaching is in English and Swahili, or?
Yes. Yep. Early on it's in Swahili. And then they start to introduce more and more English. And then pretty soon high school is pretty much only in English.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So English, so Tanzania started out as a German colony and then ended up being an English colony. And so English, there's a huge push to make English their main language. Now there's a huge push in the opposite direction, trying to go back to Swahili being their main language. But Swahili is a pretty incredible language. Like, I loved learning it and trying to do what I could to speak it. And so that is another goal of mine, is to learn it. It's a very beautiful language. So here's the hierarchy of needs again. Psychological needs, they need to be met: safety, belonging, esteem. And then at the very tippy top, after you can reach all of that stuff, that's when we can get the knowledge into them. And so it's going to take a lot. But I think even if you feel like it's a drop in the bucket, every little bit that you're doing is making a massive impact. And that's what I'm telling our students as well. Every cent, every little bit makes a massive impact for that one child. And I remember getting into teaching, and my first goal was to make an impact on somebody's life that made a difference to where they felt like that life was worth living. Because I know that we have a lot of issues today with depression and just wanting to be here. And so, like, trying to make that a huge goal is to make it to where, like, there is hope, and people do care. And so my main goal now is to inspire passion in our students to help others in need. And then what I hope is that they pass that on to somebody else, and then it spreads like wildfire, because I know it can. And I know that right now our students are wanting to help, and they're very passionate about it. It's really cool to see. So I'm excited. I'm very blessed to teach where I'm at. So skip that one. So yeah, this one just says, so I was actually absolutely shocked at how many people were in desperate need of just the basics. And I should have known. Like, I knew, like, people always talk about they're starving children in Africa. Like, you always hear that. And I have a passion for history. I know the history. I know I taught a lot about the colonization of Africa and why it is how it is right now. But then when you actually see it in person, like, I thought I was prepared, and I was not prepared. And so I'll definitely spend a lot of time teaching and preparing people, and just to be ready to help. And so we did a GoFundMe, and this was actually one of the coolest things ever. And so when I realized that we had this massive need, and since I wasn't firefighting, I kind of wiped out every bit of our savings that Tessa and I had. And so, like, I was spending money, every cent that I possibly could. And without firefighting, I kind of wiped out everything that we had. And so we did a GoFundMe, and in less than a day, I think, in 24 hours, we raised $2,000 just from people in this community, being spread on Facebook. It was amazing. And every single cent of that was able to be spent the next 2 weeks that I was there, just doing this daily. So not only were we able to provide blankets, food, just medicine, bought wheelchairs, bought crutches, provided transportation, and just making massive impacts in these lives, with a lot of that money as well. I was able to go to a lot of the rural schools to where the kids didn't have shoes. They didn't have, their clothes were just in tatters, while others had uniforms that could afford it. I was able to go to these schools and provide uniforms for every single child in the school. For about $17 a piece, I was able to buy shoes, socks, pants, dresses, shirts, and a little cap. It was their winter, and it was about mid 70s, and they all wore beanies. It was actually really cool, and little sweaters. And so for $17 a piece, they were able to get uniforms that will last them a couple of years, they said, at least the uniform. So I thought that was pretty neat. And then this again was the food. This right here on the left was one of the guys I met at at one of the home visits. He lost his eyesight. So we were able to provide, we paid for his rent for a long time, medicine for him. He's 97 years old. In this picture that you can see right here, he was conscripted into the British Army, and he actually fought against the Germans in World War II. And his story was just incredible. He's actually wearing one of the blankets that we got him. It was really cool to see. And then this little girl got her shoes, and then I'm gonna go back to a picture. She has probably one of the cutest faces, like looks that I've seen. Let's see if you can see her right here. I don't know if you guys can see where my mouse is at, but just that look that she had right here just kind of blew me away. I love that. And just working with these kids. After this though, the kids were able to go back to school. It was really cool. We got them uniforms, shoes, everything they needed. And so that was like one of the most proudest things that I had, was able to get these kids back in school, this whole group. Let's see. Yeah, so I have a really good connection with Hope and Soul Charity. We've already raised almost $700 in 2 different fundraisers that we've done, and we sent every penny back. And she's breaking down of all the stuff that we're doing. And one thing that our school is doing, and we're sponsoring these 5 children right here. We actually just finished, we're pen pals with them now. I had a lot of our classes, and Miss Weaver, our English teacher, helped me as well with this. But we took this information. We're actually writing letters right now to these students. And these are their stories. Like this one right here, lives 10 minutes from school. His father had an accident at work. His mother cares for his father and also tries to make money by selling vegetables. Their house is made from brick, but without any cement. They don't have any money to afford for the schooling, for food, for any of that. We have this one right here, really sad. He's HIV positive, lives with his aunt. His family's not able to take care of him. Has no contact with the mother or the father. His aunt is around 60 years old, and in Tanzania, that's considered very elderly. They don't have that long. Their lifespan is not that long there. And so this is another student that we're sponsoring. We're going to pay for his whole education, food, uniform, shoes, everything that he needs. This is Deborah. Let's see. Yeah, they're just, and these are pinpointed by, she wants to be a teacher, a history teacher. I thought that was incredible. So our school, Joseph's going to do everything we can. We're going to follow her. We're going to write letters. We're going to get her through school to where she can be a teacher. Another one right here. So her grandmother takes care of her. She has never been to school until, let's see. So until she was 11 years old. And so she's 17 years old, and she's just now reaching secondary school. So we're going to get her through it as well. And then another one right here, Rama. And so they all have their stories, but I mean, you can pinpoint pretty much any student. We're starting small, and 5 students, it sounds small, but it's not. Like we're going to make an impact to where these students are going to have a better lives because of Joseph's students. And it's really, really cool. And our students are going to feel better about themselves as well, knowing that they're going to be able to make that big of an impact. And so this is something I showed our students as well. Food at school for these students is $5 a month. That's it. That'll pay for every day at school where they can eat. Saturday studying, $4 a month. Food at home, this is for their entire family. We can feed them and their family for $24 a month. And I just thought that was pretty neat. And that's,
So who is it? Is the outfit you worked with administering these?
yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So she'll give me a breakdown. I wish I would have put that on there, but yeah, she gave me a breakdown of like when I send money. She shows exactly what it all goes through. She sends videos of people saying like thank you, and like she sent videos of students that we've already helped. It's really neat. So like a lot of times you give to some charities that are like the bigger corporation charities, and a lot of that will go to CEOs and all that. There's a lot of overhead, a lot of costs of running it. She actually doesn't take any money for it, because she works for IBHQ as well. So her main job is actually doing the volunteer stuff. So that's how she makes her money. Then in every ounce of free time that she has, she runs this Hope and Soul charity. And so she spends her weekend days, her mornings, her nights, doing this charity. And so, and it's small. And so when we give back, it's actually like when we gave the $700, it was a huge impact for her, especially in Arusha. And so, and every penny is spent pretty quickly on these kids and their families.
Is she American or
So,
Tanzanian?
she is actually British. She was a nurse in England. I can't remember the town. And then she went as a volunteer. And then just she felt like she needed to do more to help people. And so she went back and she got a job doing this volunteer group, and then with IBHQ, who I was working with, and then she started this charity as well. So
Okay. Okay.
Yep. And that's
was there any resistance? Were there any people who said we don't want Americans in here helping us, we can take care of our own? Did you get any of that?
not even a little bit.
Okay.
Nope. I actually was expecting that. There is a thing that if you talk to some people about, you're like, I'm going to go to Africa, I want to help, and they're like, oh, you're going to be a white savior. So there is that, but I think if you do it the right way, that's not if you're doing it to help other people and not just doing it to show off and be like, oh, I taught in Africa and like, oh, look at me. If you're doing it in that way and like actually wanting to make that sort of impact, I think that you don't get that much of pushback. And even if you do, like, I might have people that think that's what I'm doing, or other people, other volunteers. But the fact of the matter is that I was able to help families eat and have warmth and get their children to school and pay for their education. And so at the end of the day, like, that's all that matters to me. And so, yeah, there could be pushback, but I didn't get any of it. Every single person that I was able to talk with and to help and to work with, like, they were all extremely thankful. And like they were crying. And so I would cry. It was tough. But it was extremely rewarding. At the end of the day. And I want to do everything I can to keep doing it, to keep helping.
Other questions? You're all on there.
I have a question, Olan. This is Stacy Green.
Hi, Stacy.
Hey, how long were you there? I must have missed that, but what was your total time there?
Not long enough. I was there for 3 weeks. So actually,
Oh, wow.
little over 3, almost a month. But it. I wish I had a lot longer. Like, my poor wife, sorry, Tessa, but she knows. I want to spend every waking moment I have there helping. So in doing this, and if there was a way that I could afford it, but we definitely wiped out what we had. And so I'm going to have to fight fires next year. I got to take a summer off, or I'd go back. And then we're planning on going back in 2023. So if I would do it again,
next time.
I hope so. It depends on her again. It's tougher for her to get the time off than it is for me. And so, because that's my summer break. And so if we can afford it for where I didn't have to fight fires that summer, I would spend a lot longer and just keep doing what I was doing, and try to expand. My goal is to do more sustainability, to get it to where things could last longer as well, and to provide that kind of foundation to where it definitely can help for longer. So
I've got another question.
Yep.
If I can. Rich brought up an interesting point about the criticism, and the white savior. Is that just sort of a surfacey kind of thing, or is there a real resistance in some people in actually Tanzania, or is that just?
I didn't see it or hear it in Tanzania, but it is definitely a big thing in other countries though.
So
Because
other countries that go, oh, you're the American coming to save the day.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. I do know that there is other countries that there is a huge pushback. There's areas in South Africa that I know that I heard. So there is that pushback. But I think that it was done in a way that was more self-serving and not for others. That made it difficult. So, and there's going to be that way. There's going to be that's going to be constant because some people do it a lot. Some people do it because they think it looks good on a resume, or they
Right.
think that it looks good on the Instagram or Facebook. But that's the same thing with everything.
Right.
There's always those things. So there is that, and I did talk to people and they're like, oh, you're the white savior. And I'm like, and it definitely hurt. And I definitely was like, I don't.
But you said that wasn't coming from people in Tanzania.
Not even
it was
nope.
from others. Okay.
Nope. They want the help. They need the help. They don't have the foundation. If we get into history, especially in Tanzania, of like I remember some of my family who don't really understand. They're like, oh, why don't they just get jobs? The problem is that there aren't the jobs. They don't have the industries. They don't have that. The wealth is still owned. The wealth, a lot of times, it's still owned by Europe, still owned by the United States. It's still owned by China now. They don't. And so when they are working, they're working for cents on the dot. Like I think that they make some people, if you have a really good job, is $1 a day. And so you make $30 a month. They don't have the ways that we do to where we're like, oh, I'm going to work hard and make it out. There has to still be a lot of changes at the top, but the wealth is still owned, and that's another lesson for another time. But with yes, they're independent now. They've been independent since the 60s, but even then they've been destabilized so many times, and all of their country's wealth is still owned by other countries, sadly. So it's
Olan,
not
could
as
you do it?
just working hard.
Olan, could you go to the map and show us something? What's the overall population of Tanzania and where you were? How big an area did you travel, and what was the size of villages or whatever there?
So let me, for some reason, this is not responding. There we go. So Arusha is actually a pretty big town. I'll have Tessa, if you can hear me, can you look up the population of Tanzania and Arusha? It's a decent size. And if you give me 1 second, I have to teach at 1, but I'm going to see if I can get somebody to cover for me here in a second. Here's the map right here. So Tanzania is right here. Serengeti's up here, up north right here. You can see that I was Arusha up north. Mount Kilimanjaro is about right here, kind of on the border. So Tessa texted me. Population of Arusha is 1.694 million. And then she'll text me the population of Tanzania.
So Arusha was how big? How big
About 1.694 million people.
in Arusha?
Yep.
Oh my Lord.
Yep.
So you were not in a rural area.
So I actually was. So I was outside of Arusha.
Okay.
It would take a lot of times it'd take 2-3 hours to get to where I taught.
Okay.
So Tanzania is 59.7 million people.
Okay. Wow.
Yep. So yeah, but Arusha, most of the city are these slums. If you look up their like how they're actually living, they're all piled on top and packed in these little places with no electricity, no running water, any of that kind of stuff. And it is kind of spread out, but so we stayed in, I was based out of Arusha, but I actually would take a tuk-tuk and get any transportation I could to get out to my school. And it'd take about 2-3 hours to get out to these very, very, very rural areas to where, and if I had more time, I would show the pictures. I'm gonna see.
No,
Hey,
hey, Olan,
yes, sir.
that's okay.
Okay.
You go ahead and teach, and we'll bring you back later when you get with some of your students and stuff involved, and you get your basketball game going, and we'll work together on this, and you can give us updates from time to time.
Sounds good. I'll come on anytime. I messaged Trey about the game, so talk to Trey about it. I didn't get a text back yet, but it's going to be November 27th, and I'm hoping to make 4 teams. So
Okay.
yeah,
Looks like. And then when Stanlin gets back from her trip, we'll have her on too. She can we'll get another side.
all right.
Okay.
So thank you very much for having me. Yeah, we're just gonna try to make an impact and try to. And what I'm really excited about is that hopefully the impact on the students here, to where it kind of gets that passion to help people, and then just kind of keep passing that on, because I think that's the answer to making a difference in this world is just being kind and helping people. So.
And Olan, you know what? I noticed on my walk this morning, you've got at least 1 or 2 little brown kids in our school now.
We actually have quite a few, and
really
they're
really
incredible
important for them. Yeah.
Yep. Like the kids that we have in Joseph right now. I mean, I'm very blessed to teach where I'm at, and so that's why I think that like my focus now, like it was like all Joseph, and of course I'm still going to do everything I can to help my Joseph kids, but they're doing well right now, at least most of them, and I'll keep doing everything I can to help them. But now the kids that are doing well, we're gonna band together, and we're gonna start helping as many people as possible. So,
well, good luck with it. Thank you. Go teach your class and keep us posted. Okay.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Olan. And I'm going to record it, and it's recorded, so I'll get it to you. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye.